Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237, and I'm not quite sure if this would really fit in with the extreme films that I'm doing. It's more extreme than some of the films at that time, or even with foreign films that I'm doing, because it's Australian. But it's the 2005 film Wolf Creek, which, excuse me, watching this again, because it had been years since I've seen it, I really like this film. There's a lot of good things I can say about it. Um, no. So it was, well, first, it was directed by Greg McLean, who directed a number of films. One I've seen was The Belko Experiment, which is a really fun film. I reviewed that. He did do the sequel to this, which came out 2013. I red boxed it back then. I don't remember a thing about it. And there was like a 2-season, 12-episode long web series in Australia with John Jarratt as the killer in all versions. Which I gotta say, he is an underrated, like, modern day, I don't really want to say slasher, but killer. And why does it say this? Oh, okay. Something. And the thing about this film is, it says based on true events. It's not based on true events. This is based on true events as much as Texas Chainsaw Massacre is. Which there's lots of allusions to Texas Chainsaw with this, the original one. Like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, it's inspired by true events. There's a based means that's what the story is. Inspired means you took bits from it and made it your own. Like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre wasn't about a guy in Texas with a chainsaw. It was a grave robber in Wisconsin. And, well, he did kill 2 people, but it was based on the inspired by the late 80s, early 90s Australian backpack murders of Ivan Milat, and the 2001 murders by Bradley John Murdoch. Sort of a composite character is the Mick Taylor character, composite of those 2. And it's just about these 3 friends, 2 British girls and an Australian native. 2 British girls, an Australian guy. They go to a party and they're just pretty much road tripping through Australia. They end up in the outback and their car breaks down and they come across this sort of, Australian outback, sort of over the top stereotype, which is what they were going for. They, the director who also wrote the film, he did write it, or at least I think he wrote a version, or wrote it with, it was written by him, produced by David Lightfoot and Greg McLean. So Greg McLean directed, produced, co-produced, and wrote the film. Stars Nathan Phillips. So John Jarratt is Mick Taylor. And then there's Nathan Phillips, Cassandra McGrath, and Kesty Morassi. That's our cast. There's a couple extras, but that's our cast. And that's one thing I can give this film. I'll get back to the plot in a second. I'm kind of all over the place right now. That this movie was made for, what was it, $1.5 million? Australian dollars, $1.5 million. But they said, we want to make a $5 million movie, what looks like a $5 million movie, make it for $1.5 million. And I think they did that. This movie had a very small crew, very small cast. very minimal on a lot of things, even music. There's not really much of a score, at least not one that I noticed. A few ominous sounds here and there. But basically, this sort of Steve Irwin crocodile hunter stereotype, that's actually what they were going for, comes along, offers them help, says, "Oh, I'll pull your car to my place. I have the part. I'll fix it. I'll have you up and running in the morning." And when they wake up, well, one of the characters wakes up. She's tied up, and shit's all fucked up. Basically, he's a sadistic, tourist-hating serial killer, complete psychopath. And John Jarratt is phenomenal in this. I will say, of all the like horror icons, whether they be well known or underrated, modern ones, like at least since within the 2000s, he's up there for me. I mean, he really I really know how to explain it, because he wins them over with charm. Like, he's like, oh, I'm not even gonna do the accent. Fuck that, because I'll just sound stupid because I can't do it. He jokes around with them. He's super polite. He's charming. They kind of start to get a little weirded out, because when he's pulling their car, the Outback at night is nothing but blackness, because there's nothing around. He's pulling them for what seems like hours. They get to his place, which actually, it was like a mining warehouse, or like a mining garage, place for mines. And even that is a palindrome, or like sort of a reverse palindrome of Ivan Milat, because it's Ivan spelled backwards and Milat spelled backwards, so it's not a complete palindrome, but it's a pretty raw film, and I would probably say the next to All the Boys Love Mandy Lane, maybe this one, I'm not sure which one I think has the 70s grindhouse aesthetic more. Probably Mandy Lane, but this one is up there. This really has just that gritty, it looks like it was made in 2005, but it really just has that raw, just grindhouse feel. I love it. I love the cinematography in this. It does go to some dark, sadistic places. I guess John Jarratt, to get into character, he just secluded himself, which actually, one of the locations in this, either the mining place or the car garage, was a crime scene at one point. It was the scene of a murder. Not any of the ones that this film was inspired by, but there was some controversy because the locals thought they were making a film about that murder, which kind of is like, no, it's about a different murder that happened here around the place. Which even on the back, Ken Fox from TV Guide says, "Not since the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre has terror felt so real." To an extent, I can agree with that. As far as how it's done, just this really raw, gritty. I keep saying raw, but that's really what I feel when I watch this. Kind of, because it's like the deep south of Australia, Texas, deep south of America, which there really is a place called Wolf Creek, but there's an E at the end, and it's actually like the northwestern part of Australia, whereas this is pretty much in the deep south of it. But basically, it's kind of a little bit of like high tension, where one of the girls, Liz, her and Ben kind of have a thing. Ben pretty much vanishes from like when they all go to fall asleep and he works on the car. Which, when they're having the campfire, he's still being charming and they're laughing, but he kind of drops hints. Like Ben asks him, so what do you do? And he's like, I could tell you, but I have to kill you. I just tried the accent without even knowing I was. Or, asking like, do you really get paid to shoot kangaroos? And he's like, oh yeah, I do it as a service, but kangaroos are everywhere, kind of like tourists. So he's kind of dropping some sick humor, but even while he's torturing these girls, he's dropping some, he's doing that like Australian kind of like, calm down. He even says like, I always have to wear a rubber with you, cunts. I don't know where you've been. Because Christy is tied up and he's taunting her. She's already beaten up. Liz is pretty much going around outside trying to create diversions to get her to try to help her fuck Ben, I guess. Not help her fuck him, but fuck him. This is also a movie that, for 99 minutes, not in a way that, like, I don't mean this in a way that it was boring. I mean, just, there's so many, just, like, you think it's going to end so many times. Like, you think this might be the last scene, but there's even more. I will say there were some stupid decisions and convenience in this film. I will admit that. For example, when when Liz gets the upper hand on Mick, she has his bolt-action rifle. And I'm going to say spoilers here, but if you're a fan of the original Chainsaw Massacre, and I mean, that's my second favorite movie of all time, has been for more than half my life, I can say, even with all the sequels, reboots, anything Chainsaw Massacre related, or any other film, this is the closest as far as just, again, that word, that gritty rawness, the tension, the feel, the atmosphere, just the kind of really catching that kind of sick, depraved killer. Like, those are psycho-cannibalistic hillbillies. This is just, a wisecracking Australian outback sadistic serial killer. Tourist-hating serial killer. So spoilers now. She shoots him and gets him in the neck, and he goes down. And of course, there's no more bullets. And instead of taking, they do that. That's not a knife. This is a knife. He's got it right on his belt. But she does these wimpy little hits with the rifle on his back, not like on his head. And doesn't go for his knife. They get his keys to his truck. He opens the door. He has a shotgun, which means the shotgun was in there. They could have looked for it. But I know. The rest of the movie has to happen, so they can't do that. And they come to one part where they stop the truck at this cliff, and they push his truck off. I'm guessing to make him think they crashed and he'll stop looking for him. But he seems a little too smart for that. I would almost say there's part of Oh my god, why am I blanking on his name? I feel so ashamed of myself. Oh, Rutger Hauer. There's a little bit of Rutger Hauer Hitcher in this because, he's so skilled. Like, there's parts where, he's like sniper shooting with a hunting rifle from far away, like a sharpshooter. Insane driver. Always knows their next move. So yeah, there are some dumb decisions. Eventually she leaves her by the cliff because there's like a garage full of cars. She finds this camcorder, she watches it, and it's a family with a young child doing a whole movie about their road trip and how they met him. It doesn't really go into it, but it's implied they ended with him. And of course she gets the keys. She gets in the car. All the cars that's in there, the one she gets in, that's when he's in the back seat with a knife, stabs her through the seat. Very convenient. He knew she was going to find those keys to that car. Although I do like the shot. The shot is like from the outside of the windshield. So you see like her kind of going down in pain, but it's like the glare of his face like next to it on the windshield. I liked that shot. And then he tortures her, and I mean, it's pretty, like he, again, they do this is a knife, just slashes some of her fingers off, and of course he's talking the whole time. This is part of his character, saying like, oh, it's not that bad, not that bad. And he does this thing called Head on a Stick, which I think the first DVD that came out had this as the cover. Head on a Stick is when you stick a knife or whatever in someone's spine, separate the spinal cord, and they go completely paralyzed. And she falls limp on the floor. Sort of her reaction. I know that was on the DVD cover. I mean, that's a pretty terrifying scene because you still know what's going on. You're immobilized. And I mean, that would be a terrifying thing. Knowing, being completely with it, but immobilized and helpless. And now it's getting daylight, and she gets the idea that, well, I guess she's fucked. I guess I better go. And then you have the chase with him and Herb. Like, this guy pulls up, and that's like the sharpshooter. You just hear like a then shoot. The guy with the car gets shot. She gets in his car, starts driving off. I was scratching my leg. I wasn't doing anything inappropriate. So, you have like really feels like a 70s exploitation chase scene. Like Duel or like a 70s road movie. Hell, I felt it more with this than Tarantino's Death Proof. There's even a quote by Tarantino. John Jarratt delivers a performance that's destined to go down as one of the great horror film heavies of the last 20 years. Even Robert Rodriguez, as real as horror gets. I agree with all of that. And yes, the car chase scene in this I thought was better than the one in Death Proof. Huge Tarantino fan. His one horror film, Death Proof, I'm not a fan of, but... And so, of course, he's able to shoot her tire, it rolls over, he shoots her. And then we catch up to Ben, who spent the whole movie on like this cross with nails in his arms, in this cave with a bunch of dogs in the cage. See that still. He manages to get out. He walks through the outback and the sun and everything else. a couple in a van picks him up. He gets help, and that's the end of the film. You know, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you get pretty much the true story of what happens, like how through an unorganized search and confusion, no trace of either girl was ever found, or any murder site, or anyone of his description. Ben was held for suspicion for 4 months, then released. He now lives in Southern Australia. And then we get a shot of Mick Taylor again with the sunset. I really enjoyed this film. I mean, okay, 2005, that's the same year that Devil's Rejects came out. This is more 70s grindhouse aesthetic than Devil's Rejects. Hell, even House of a Thousand Corpses has a lot of Chainsaw Massacre type story elements. Like I said, this is the closest to that kind of level of horror and grittiness and just real feel of terror as far as being encountering a serial killer since Chainsaw Massacre. I would say this is the best one. And this didn't get like a super wide release. It was released internationally, but you know, Roger Ebert actually criticized it for how realistic it was. I could give it credit there. It's not overly gory or bloody. It's as realistic as it can be. I mean, there's still some horrific violence, but you can have a bunch of violence without a ton of bloodshed. Like, yeah, when someone gets shot, there's blood spatter. I mean, that's going to happen anyway. I really do want to get the sequel. I mean, I picked this up at a flea market for $1. And I forgot how much I liked this film. I really liked it years ago when I saw it. Kind of forgot about it. But watching it now, it makes me want to watch Chainsaw Massacre again. But not in the sense like when you watch a film that, like a bad movie that reminds you of it. Like, I should be watching the better version of this right now. Just because this got me in the spirit for it. And of course, you know, Ivan Milat, just if you want the true crime update, he died of cancer last year, actually. Bradley Murdoch, he'll be eligible for parole in 2032. But I think it was more so. I would say Milat was definitely more of the base kind of overall character. I mean, how even the name of the mining company is the Palindrome. You know, because he was this. He killed 7 backpackers, which I believe it was 2 British girls, and then there was like a German couple, which is what the sequel is. But yeah, awesome movie. Again, I mean, feel free to let me know in the comments if you would consider this as part of like the extreme, because I would consider this almost as violent, but in a realistic way as High Tension. I would. Yeah, it's not as, you know, fire hosey, bloody as High Tension, but, you know, it is that level of violence, I think. The acting, I also have to commend. The acting felt very natural. Not just from John Jarratt as Mick Taylor. The 3 tourists, their chemistry, the acting, whether they're, you know, playing around, being normal, or they're being scared, you know, everything about this movie felt natural, except for the dumb choices and convenience that did pop up. But anyway, I think it's safe to say I loved this film. I really do. It is you know, I would say this is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You know, they always say the Texas Chainsaw Massacre of this generation. This is definitely that. Wolf Creek, fucking awesome. At some point, I'll get the sequel, and I would like to check out the series too, just see what that's like. But yeah, definitely love Wolf Creek. Thank you for watching.